You're live.
Yeah, I got a message saying the webinar is now streaming live.
Okay,
Okay, cool.
Beautiful.
And then the recording.
I'm just gonna do that.
Okay.
All right. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for your patience if you've been waiting with
I got
us.
a message saying the webinar is now streaming live.
Shh. Okay,
Okay, cool.
Beautiful.
And then the recording.
I'm just gonna do that. Yes, I did it. Oh.
Okay.
All right. Okay, you guys, you need to be quiet. Welcome to our Sonoma County Master Gardeners webinar. This is our first actual webinar, so please bear with us. We're learning the tool today. I'm Nancy Krevling. I'm a Master Gardener with the class of 2009 who transferred up to Sonoma County in 2018. And I'm going to be your moderator today. First, I'd like everyone to know, if you didn't hear, this talk is being recorded. So if you don't, none of the participants or the attendees will be recorded, but if you're uncomfortable with being on a talk that's recorded, then please wait and watch it on, you can watch it on YouTube Live, or you can watch it on our YouTube channel after we post it next week. And then I invite you also to check out some of our other presentations on our YouTube channel, and we'll put the link for the YouTube channel in the chat box. I encourage you also to explore our website and visit our Facebook page, and also learn more about the University of California Master Gardener program, the resources that we have available for you, the home gardener, and information on how you can become a Master Gardener if you're interested here in Sonoma County. This talk is another in the ongoing collaboration between the Sonoma County Master Gardeners and the Sonoma County Libraries. As you may know, since the 1990s, individual branches in the county have hosted Master Gardener talks throughout the spring, summer, and fall on a wide variety of topics of interest to the home gardener. We're very pleased to be continuing this collaboration with the library in this pandemic time, and we're transitioning to a digital format. We do have a few ground rules for our presentation today. If for any reason your Zoom connection goes down, just reboot and click on the link again, and you'll be able to get back in. And if you have questions, which we hope you do, please put them in the Q&A portion. We won't be picking them up from the chat box. The Q&A box is located in different locations on each device, so you may have to look around for it, but the title is Q&A. It's not questions, Q&A. Let's see, on some devices, you can click on the participants icon and find it there. On some, there's an icon at the bottom or the top of your screen. On an iPad, click on the 3 dots for more, and you'll find it there. You can submit questions anytime during the talk. Our speaker will answer your questions at the end of the presentation. If there are questions that we can answer just in the Q&A during the talk, we'll be doing that. The chat box is also available if you need to communicate during the presentation. In the chat box, you'll also find special links and other information related to our presentation. And you can click on it during the presentation and bookmark those links. Or you can take a picture with your phone of the chat box and you'll have it. Unfortunately, in this format, there's not a way for us to save the chat screen with all the links. So, and finally, just a reminder, we are recording. And that's it for the ground rules. Now let's get on to today's program. I'm so excited to introduce Suzanne Clark and her talk on what's happened to all the butterflies. Suzanne's been a gardener all her life. She started by picking peonies or cutting peonies with her grandma to put on grave sites for Memorial Day. She's lived and gardened on 4 continents. Suzanne lived and taught elementary school in Washington, D.C. and on the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland for over 20 years. Each year, she harvested monarch eggs and fostered them all the way through metamorphosis to butterflies. In her elementary school classes, her classes began the school year raising the monarch caterpillars on milkweed. They observed them, measured them, and marveled as the caterpillars metamorphosized into chrysalis and then butterflies. Her gardens in Washington, D.C. and in St. Michael's, Maryland were way stations for Monarch Watch. In 2008, Suzanne became a master gardener in Maryland, specializing in wildlife habitat, integrated pest management, and stormwater management. She moved to Petaluma in 2012 and again took the master gardener training. Suzanne is devoted to sharing her passion for saving butterfly and other pollinator habitat. Suzanne has been fostering butterflies and monitoring the flight of monarchs for Monarch Watch for 20 years. She's a member of the Western Monarch Thanksgiving Count for the Xerces Society. You can follow her on Facebook at Sonoma County Butterfly Alliance, and we'll put that in our chat. So now, with no further ado, I'm turning it over to Suzanne. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Let's just check to make sure you're seeing me okay here.
We see you.
Okay. And you see the screen. That's the main thing.
We don't see your screen yet.
Okay. Well, that's
You'll have to share your screen.
okay. Okay.
Great.
Okay, great. So what's happened to all of our butterflies? Oops. Why are the caterpillars and butterflies at risk? Well, one thing is climate change has created such extreme and unpredictable weather conditions that our wildlife may not be able to adapt quickly enough to survive. Loss of native larval host plants, weeds such as nettles and plantain, due to habitat conversion and land management over development. Loss of native nectar plants for butterflies and for all pollinators. Drought conditions in the Western US, resulting in fewer host and nectar plants late in the summer. Insecticide and herbicide poison all insects. So the mission statement of Sonoma County Master Gardeners has to do with sustainable home gardening. So we help home gardeners learn how to garden more sustainably. And why do we want to garden sustainably? Well, to conserve natural resources, to support biodiversity, to support healthy ecological systems, and to maintain the vitality of the environment. So in other words, as the Xerces Societies say, protecting the life that sustains us. And we did not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrowed it from our children. So where have the butterflies gone? Why don't we see so many of them anymore? Is there a way the home gardener can help bring back our butterflies? Where do we start? With the butterfly, the egg, the caterpillar, or the plant? A caterpillar is a baby butterfly or moth, and I know you know that. And a butterfly is a brightly colored flying insect with two pairs of large wings. The order Lepidoptera means scale wing in Greek. So, like all insects, caterpillars and butterflies have three body parts: the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. So the larva doesn't resemble the adult? Is that difference really so very important? Absolutely. All caterpillars, no matter what they look like, how fuzzy they are, or spiky, or smooth, or interesting, all caterpillars have a mouth and a jaw to chew leaves and flowers. So this is a Gulf fritillary, and you can see the Gulf, and they even like to eat the pods of the flowers. So while all butterflies, no matter what they look like, sip nectar from flowers through a proboscis. And you can see that curly little thing right there, and that's how they get their nourishment. So they have no mouth parts, unlike the caterpillar. Here's some amazing close-up of the proboscis in action. And here you can see it's curled up, and here it is actually going into a flower and sipping nectar. So if the anatomies of caterpillars and butterflies are so very different, then it makes sense that they eat different foods. And that's what they do. The challenge, though, is that butterflies require specific host plants for the caterpillars to feed on. In other words, adult butterflies can mate, but if a mother butterfly with an ovary full of eggs does not find her specific host plant, there will be no laying of eggs, no new caterpillars, and no new butterflies. Not so good. So if butterflies only lay eggs on specific host plants, how do we know which plants they need? This is where we can help you. So where do we start? Butterfly gardening in Northern California foothills is different from butterfly gardening in the urban areas. And this is what Dr. Art Shapiro tells us. He's a distinguished professor of evolution and ecology at UC Davis. So butterfly gardening in Northern California foothills is different from butterfly gardening in urban areas. So which butterflies do you see in your area? Which butterflies live in your area? In other words, you cannot necessarily choose which butterflies will come to your garden. So which butterflies live in your area? Do you live in an urban, suburban area? Do you live in a rural area? Which host plants grow near you or have you planted? Here's the urban suburban setting. The butterflies in this area tend to have multiple broods a year because their host plants are readily available, depend on a combination of introduced plants and irrigation for the continued presence. So they are actually linked with human beings a little bit more. Let's look at a few butterflies and their host plants. Here's the Gulf fritillary. And this picture here on the left is one that I took. I had released a female who was on this lovely lavender, and she had no longer been there a minute or two, and then the male came and found her immediately. So the Gulf fritillary mates, and here's where they're mating. And here they are actually close together again. So the Gulf fritillary will only plant eggs on the host plant, Passiflora. And the good thing about it, there are lots of different kinds of passion vine. And because of that, because of their numbers, we actually see more Gulf fritillaries than you see other plants because the host plant is available. But one thing I want to show you is this is what a plant will look like if it is used as a host plant. So please don't say, oh my goodness, my plant doesn't have any leaves because the caterpillars are eating them. Well, in fact, that's why the plant should be there as food for that caterpillar, because you're doing a great job helping us create the habitat for the caterpillars. An Anna's swallowtail. The Anna's swallowtail is a beautiful one and very common in urban areas. And its native host plants, the lomatium, here, California rock parsnip, and hog fennel. Now, we don't see those so much, do we? But what we do see is this non-native fennel. And this is why the Anna's swallowtails we see all the way up into October, because the plant is nearby. And it's a non-native, it's a European sweet fennel, but it is a member of the carrot family. And the Anna's swallowtail will lay eggs on mainly any plant from the carrot family. One that I have in my garden is bronze fennel. And I like it because it's a plant that I can use the fennel and eat the root later on. But at the same time, here are the butterflies using the plant. And the thing is, so if they stay there too long, they will disappear because of something I'm going to talk to you about in a few minutes. Stay tuned. So this is what it looks like when a caterpillar eats your plant. So don't be surprised if you have something eating your plant. Now, in a rural setting, it's different. Habitat niches, or the little places where butterflies will hang out. Sometimes it's along the stream beds in oak woodlands. Sometimes in the grassy foothills, the chaparral and forest clearings, or in meadows. So we'll have a little bit of a look here. So which butterflies lay eggs in the rolling hills and oak woodlands of Sonoma County? The California sister here on the left, and here's the red admiral. Now they both live, as you see at the bottom, habitat along the stream beds. The California sister will only lay eggs on oak trees, where the red admiral will actually lay eggs on stinging nettles. So if you take away all the nettles, the red admiral will not have any host plant to lay eggs on. So here we have the mournful dusky wing, and the other one is a California hair streak butterfly. So they both live chaparral, brushland, forest edges, open woodland. And both of them use the ceanothus, oaks, and willows. So you can see these are our native plants. Now the mourning cloak is one that you can see quite often. It's actually visible most of the year. And here's the western tiger swallowtail, also very common. The habitat are moist areas, so near streams, and the host plants for both of them is the willow and the poplar. And these you can often see in urban settings if you have a moist area nearby where the host plant will live. Whoops. Here we have in the buckeye and the variable checker spot. They live in the open areas, fields and meadows. In fact, that's the buckeye. The checker spot lives on coastal foothills to the canyons. But as it happens, they both will eat the same kind of host plant, but it needs to contain bitter eriod glycosides, including plantain plants. So a lot of the time we think of these things as weeds, but in fact, they're essential for these butterflies to actually lay their eggs. The West Coast lady is one that we see, and its host plant is the mallow family, and it lives in open places, including weedy areas, gardens, roadsides, fields, foothills, chaparral, and disturbed areas. So this one can actually come into an urban garden quite often too. Now the California tortoiseshell also lives in these same places, and its host plant is Ceanothus. Besides the correct host plant for caterpillars, what else do we need to attract butterflies? Nectar plants. And here's a beautiful wild bergamot. But which nectar plants do pollinators most favor? Native, of course. And here's some beautiful ones. And the reason they like the natives is that these plants and pollinators have co-evolved in a symbiotic way to supply each other with the necessities of life. So this is what nature does. It actually will feed and nourish both sides at the same time, the pollinator and the plants. So here's some examples of natives. Here's a yarrow and California fuchsia and lupins. Both nectar and caterpillar host plants. So these will feed both this is the milkweed, of course, the native milkweed for the monarch, but the butterfly loves to have nourishment from these different flower, bush monkey flower and the bee plant. So, and here we have salvias. The butterfly loves the native salvias and also introduced salvias, which this one is. Here is a beautiful rudbeckia, and there are many kinds of rudbeckia, and they provide nectar for the butterflies, because remember, they do not have mouth parts, they just sip nectar. So here's Erigonium, California buckwheat, and it's a really popular nectar source for butterflies and also for many other insect predators. Here's a ceanothus as well, lots of different ones. Penstemon is one of my favorites. And here is a hawk moth who is sipping nectar from the penstemon, and a hummingbird. So it's not just insects. So scabiosa, pincushion flower, beautiful nectar. These lavenders aren't necessarily nectars, but native, but they're wonderful nectar sources. Violets, and what I was really fascinated to see was that native violets alone support 11 different subspecies of butterflies, which mean that the butterflies will lay eggs on them. So here is a mixture of host and native nectar plants. This is in my garden. And here you can see different times of year. Lots of different flowers, and I change it all the time. You know, I never stop changing it. But what is another reason our caterpillars and butterflies are threatened? Natural threats to all caterpillars. Meet the beneficials, natural enemies of garden pests. Well, they are, and they're fantastic, and we need to have them in the garden. But perspective is everything. Caution, the next few slides can be a little bit gruesome, so just want you to know what's, you hold on to your seats. Here are some monarch eggs on milkweed. And here is, I don't know if you know what this is, but that is larva, or the pre-stage before the ladybug. Ladybugs are wonderful creatures. We all love ladybugs, but beneficial white spiders and even ladybugs will eat eggs and caterpillars. Here's a monarch caterpillar caught by a spider. And here is a crab spider caught another butterfly. Here's a tiger swallowtail caught in a spider's web. And here ants are eating an Anna's swallowtail caterpillar. A praying mantis, can you see that praying mantis? So well camouflaged, is eating a monarch butterfly. And here are the tachinid flies. And these are quite amazing little things. And I was told that the best way to know what, to recognize them is the fuzzy butt at the end. You see that? And here's what they do. They can lay eggs in a swallowtail chrysalis. So inside there will be these little wasp, or they could be from the flies, different things, but out come the larva. But this is nature, it's the web of life. So here we've gotten, this is a Gulf fritillary chrysalis, but there's a hole. So it will not, produce a butterfly. And it's a tachinid fly or the wasp that will have done that. So this one is really quite amazing. This is the non-native paper wasp fly. And you see how it has caught a caterpillar and it is actually eating that caterpillar. Look at that. Look how fat he is now. He ate that caterpillar. So the non-native European paper wasp circles, attacks a Gulf fritillary. And I find them just so irritating. And this is what happened to me. One day I saw my bird feeder was filled with the paper wasp. So I took it out and I put it in a bucket of water. And I left it overnight with a lid on top. There it is. And guess what? I had no more European paper wasp. So sometimes human beings can intervene, but it's only fair because these are not native, so we don't need those. But something is changing for many of our native insects, climate change. So what is happening to butterflies as the climate changes? Not good, right? But this is going to be something we will talk about next time. So how can we help butterflies? Plant nectar plants for the local butterflies. Plant host plants for the local caterpillars. Create wildlife corridors to link habitats through human development. Encourage public land managers to create wildlife butterfly habitats near agricultural fields. Support other conservation efforts. So here are some links that I think have been shared with you that will give you some tips on, as I said, the difference between the foothills and rural urban areas for the butterfly gardening. This is my Facebook page. And the butterfly larval plants in Sonoma County. So you can see, what area you live in and what size, what type of plant you need to buy. And this one is the host plants for the California butterfly larva, which means not only for Sonoma County, for a wider area. So we are the UC Master Gardeners of Sonoma County. We're a nonprofit. And we put our website in here in case you would ever like to support us. Thank you. So that's the end of my slides. So do we have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Suzanne. There we go. So Suzanne, I would like to thank you for a great presentation. Those photographs are fantastic. And in case you didn't know, Suzanne took most of those photos herself. So she's a very astute observer of nature. If you do, we have questions in the Q&A. Looks like we have a couple. Mignon wants to know where you can source native violets.
Well, the best, one of the best places is California Flora. That's one place. There are some native nurseries in, the mostly natives out in Point Reyes. That's there. And I just, if you're out in nature, have a look to see what you can find. I mean, I'm not saying taking the ones you see, but we'll give you an idea of the ones that are in your area. But the best place is to, if you have friends who live in a rural area and have some native violets, they might share them with you. But otherwise, the only way to do it is to go to a native nursery. I don't think they have seeds for it. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're lucky in Sonoma County to have so many nurseries that sell natives.
Right.
Yeah. And then we have another question. Do we have many red admirals in Sonoma County?
Well, the thing is, this is exactly, my point is that remember what the red admirals like to use as host plants are nettles, and a lot of people don't like them, and we consider weeds annoying. And so human beings, remove some of these plants, these essential plants, and the logical conclusion is that we have fewer than we could do. So, but they are around, and so this is an opportunity, I would put it, for people who live on larger pieces of land, or maybe in the Sebastopol area, in West Sonoma, where it's moist and where there are places where nettles will grow naturally. Nettles actually makes a great tea too. But that's always what the challenge is that it is a butterfly that is meant to be in Sonoma County. So the thing to do is to plant whatever it is you need. In fact, I did that when I moved into my garden, my house in Petaluma. And I do have a talk about how I changed my garden to be a wildlife habitat, but I had certainly no milkweed or anything. And I planted, all sorts of things. And that meant that I started to get monarchs coming in, laying eggs. And so, it's the idea of planted and they will come. So I would, look for the natives. And then the thing is, the more that we go to these nurseries and ask for native plants, the more the native plant nurseries or the nurseries will bring in natives, because that's what we ask for. I hope that answered your question.
So if you want red admirals, plant a swath of nettle, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the whole idea with if you look at the links, the Sonoma County larval plants, the plants for the caterpillars, just see if there are any there that you might have, you might have taken out, because nettles can be annoying. But the whole thing is that we have to learn how to live with nature, to allow nature to be itself. And if we want to have these creatures, and, because when people say, what's happened to all of our butterflies? Well, they have disappeared because people have come and planted geraniums and, and camellias and roses and, these sorts of things that are not beneficial. I mean, there are no habitat or what am I talking about? No larval plants for the caterpillars. And without that, we aren't going to have butterflies. So the whole real question for this is plant larval plants. And some of them, like, the monkey flower, the mimulus, as I said earlier, it's a nectar flower, and it's also a host plant. So if you plant one, or if you plant masses, and if you encourage your neighbors to do it, you can have a little oasis. And that's the whole idea about this building a corridor for wildlife. If you sort of work in a network, and I know people are doing that, they're doing that with the pipevine swallowtail. And in fact, I've been doing it in my own garden. And I talk about that in another talk. And I have some friends, because I live in downtown Petaluma, but I planted Dutchman's pipevine, and I have friends who have done it too, a few blocks away. And what we are working on is to create a habitat for the pipevine swallowtail butterfly. And
Excuse me for a moment. I'd like to ask all attendees, please repeat your questions in the Q&A box. Anything you put in the chat box, please repeat in the Q&A box. This is what Nancy is working from, and that's where we need to have the questions if possible.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your cooperation.
Thanks, Dee.
Okay, I think that's basically answered that one.
I think so, yeah. And then Pamela has a question. What about neonicotinoids?
Well, the
Known
thing-
as neonics to some people.
Yes, yes. Well, we have to, if we plant native plants, I mean, the whole idea about using beneficial insects, we don't need to have any kind of insecticides or pesticides. So, you know, we don't want to have that. I mean, I'm not sure what else I can say.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, neonics are a systemic poison pesticide, and a lot of nursery plants are grown using neonicotinoids.
But, you know, people have stopped that. A few years ago, Friedman's had was selling the tropical milkweed. And I know of several people who bought it, and we had monarch caterpillars laying eggs and dying. And, you know, people complained to Friedman's, and they stopped having them sprayed. So when you buy a plant, you can ask the nursery, has this been sprayed with anything? But, you know, so, you know, the thing is, we need to avoid any that have been sprayed with any kind of insecticide, because obviously it'll poison the caterpillars.
An insecticide is basically an all-purpose poison for insects. So you get the bad ones as well as the good ones. Yep.
Exactly.
And then that kind of your mention about the milkweed ties in with the next question. How does milkweed vary between Sonoma County and the Midwest, or even the East Coast?
Well, I actually happen to know that because I have a monarch way station here in Petaluma, and I also had one on the East Coast, and I grew up in the Midwest. So I've seen a lot of milkweed in my time. And the thing that's so interesting is that monarchs will eat any milkweed because that's what their host plant is. But, you know, the whole idea about plants and what I was saying, you know, in my talk, that there is a difference between rural and urban, basically. And if you think about the mountains, if you think about meadows, those are different kind of habitats. And, you know, the moisture level, the shade level, the dryness, it will affect the kind of plant that lives there. So the milkweed has evolved to its environment. And what, you know, this is a huge controversy about the kind of milkweed that you plant. And I do another talk on monarchs. And I do follow Dr. Art Shapiro, who is, as I said before, he is studying evolution as well as ecology. So about what the environment, how the environment is evolving can affect, obviously, the insect life and the butterflies. So, and so the thing is, as it happens, the common milkweed, which grows, which is native on the East Coast and Midwest, is so similar to our speciosa, which is here in Sonoma County. And it is a very sturdy kind of plant with a kind of leathery kind of leaf. But the monarchs, you know, it's one that the monarchs will lay their eggs on. So they do differ, but it all has to do with the environment. And as I say, the tropical milkweed, which is not native, is, as I say, there's a big controversy about whether people should plant it or not. I go into that a little bit on my my Facebook page, but it is a huge story, and it's you know, it's really very complicated. It's a whole nother talk. But if you plant native, you can't beat it. You know, native is always best. And so, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And speaking of monarchs, what month do the monarchs lay their eggs in this area?
Well, that depends on where they are. And what happens is that we have our Western monarch will overwinter on the Sonoma, not the Sonoma coast, mainly from Marin down to Santa Cruz, and in the trees along the coast here and there. And so the thing is, they will come out of their dormancy, the diapause, in like February or March. And if they come our way up towards, because they'll be migrating up to, Canada, more or less, then we could have eggs in the spring. And I have had eggs in the spring. If we have a lot of rain or wind and it pushes them more inland, then they will be going up through Central California. So then they will be going north, and then they start coming back down in about August, so that they're migrating towards their winter spot. And so August and September, we usually have the most eggs, but we can have them in spring, but we should have them around, or now, in fact, we should not have eggs because the monarchs should be at their overwintering sites. And today is the first day of the Western monarch Thanksgiving count, where volunteers will go to different overwintering sites and actually count how many butterflies are there. So they do it over Thanksgiving, and then they do it over New Year's. And the idea is to see, are there butterflies that, approximately the same number in Thanksgiving time and over the New Year. And, so much depends on the weather and the climate change. Too much rain, too much cold at the wrong time is really, very challenging, because if the butterfly can't fly if it's pouring with rain. And so that means they won't be laying eggs. So it's there's another talk. I do one on monarchs. So I'd love to talk about them to you later.
So Alice is wondering if there are more monarchs this year. Do we know yet?
This is what we're working on. We're counting them right now. There are not a lot. I mean, the thing is, right now, the Western monarch is 0.5% of what it was 30 years ago. It's tragic. And I can't say there are more. I happen to have about 8 chrysalis monarchs now that are about to emerge. And the reason is, and I see the question down there from Alice about tropical milkweed. And this is what the thing that's a challenge about tropical milkweed, and what Dr. Shapiro says, and I do think he's right. Tropical milkweed is a very popular milkweed for monarchs to lay their eggs on. They do like to lay their eggs on those plants. And so the thing is, if the monarch comes out of its chrysalis and say, in October, and sees flowering tropical milkweed, it could be fooled into thinking it should mate then. But it should not mate. It should be going to its overwintering site, because the thing about it, our weather changes so abruptly. I mean, what it's been like recently. We would have temperatures, in the 80s, and then suddenly it gets cold. And so if the monarch lays the eggs when it's too cold, the little caterpillars and eggs won't survive. It would be much better for that adult to go to the overwintering site, stay there overwinter, and be strong. And then that same monarch would be around in March, come out of its diapause, or its resting state, and then lay eggs. That would be the best thing. So about tropical milkweed, what Dr. Shapiro suggests is to cut that tropical milkweed down 4 times in the year. And by October, make sure that all of the flowers are gone. So cut it to be about 6 inches high. And in October. But I'll tell you, if you cut the milkweed, that tropical milkweed down in say June and July too, the mother will actually lay eggs, will tend to lay eggs on that new shoot anyway. She loves that, the new shoot coming out that's just been, cut down. So it's actually a benefit to the butterfly. It's just that we don't want them to lay eggs in October and November, which has been happening.
Okay, thank you. How about lantana? Is that a good plant for butterflies?
It's a wonderful plant for butterflies. It's a wonderful nectar source. It's not a host plant, but it's a wonderful for the butterflies. So remember, the caterpillar has a mouth and will chew the leaves. And the nectar plants, lantana is a wonderful one.
Great, thank you. And then Alice wonders if you can tell us a little bit more about wildlife corridors.
Well, this is a new thing. I mean, the way that it happens, master gardeners are really very, really good agents for this. And that would be to connect people. And that's what I've done, actually, what I try to do with my Sonoma County Butterfly Alliance. I connect people with similar interests. And if people are wanting to, if they want to do that, is to connect with other people of like minds and to understand what it is the butterflies need, and then coordinate that way. There are some, and I belong to a nonprofit that I get the emails from, and it's called Connecting the Wildlife Corridors. It's a so the thing is, it's something that we want to encourage in the future. It's something that we could, we have the power to connect with each other and share information and share our enthusiasm. And that's what we're trying to do. So it's a new thing. It's something that we are working on, and we welcome all of you to help us share this kind of information.
Yeah, I know a lot of the conservation groups are working on that, partly for migration purposes and for just territories for the larger animals, not necessarily the butterflies, but the larger animals.
Exactly.
Go ahead. If anybody else has more questions, we have a bit more time with Suzanne. Please put them in the Q&A. Suzanne, thanks for such a great talk. As I mentioned earlier, this will be posted to YouTube probably next week. And you can also go to YouTube or find the link on our Sonoma County Master Gardeners website. It's on the left side there. And that'll give you access to all sorts of different talks, veggie happenings, all sorts of great stuff that we've been doing virtually, both in the past and with our stepped up efforts now. I'd like to call your attention again to some of our upcoming talks. We're planning a webinar on making holiday wreaths with the wonderful creative Sue Lovelace. And please watch our website for the dates, or check. If you're on our constant contact, you'll get notified about that in your email. You will need to register, and the link will be on the link to register will be on the Master Gardeners website. We hope to host 2 additional talks with other butterfly information with Suzanne next year. And we also have a talk planned on California oaks, one on plant propagation, and also on pruning. So if you have fruit trees, that you'll want to tune in for that. Those dates have not yet been set, but once again, go ahead and check our website or wait for your constant contact. There are a number of resources in the chat, links to information about butterflies that Suzanne has provided. And you can find those resources online. And then also the Sonoma County Library has a wealth of information about butterflies, native gardening, and basically all sorts of gardening topics. If you have a library card, you can research and request books and download a lot of them digitally or do curbside pickup. And looks like we have another question. Are native plants invasive?
Well, what I would say depends on what it is. You know, a lot of the, if you're talking about milkweed is, you know, it can spread out a little bit, but that's one reason why the tropical milkweed has been so popular, is that it is, you know, for the urban gardener, it's very much more compact. The Asclepias speciosa is best, I think, out in a little bit rural area where you have a little bit of space. But you can, if you don't want to have it spread too much, I have both in my garden, and I have a small garden, and I manage it very well because I won't let it go to seed and drop the seeds on the ground near it. And so that reduces the spread. And, you know, I think they're lovely plants, they're wonderful nectar plants, and the butterflies love them. So, you know, everything has to be managed. I'm forever trimming things back a little bit. And so I don't call it too invasive, no.
Suzanne, I posted in the comment in the Q&A from the USDA.
Right.
What is an invasive plant? The technical definition of an invasive plant does not include a native. A plant that is part native plants are not. So there's a definition for it in the Q&A.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm actually looking at the Q&A again.
Look in the questions answered,
Right.
and I put the link in there.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's, you know, I think that makes sense. I see this other question about Buddleia as a nectar plant. It's interesting. You know, that's another one. There's a bit of a controversy, and it's actually Buddleia, you're not allowed to plant it or import it into, I think it's Oregon. But when I was at, you know, when I was a master gardener in Maryland, we had a person from the Department of Agriculture who said that the Buddleia was not a good plant for the butterflies, that it was like candy for butterflies rather than the native plants. So, you know, and the reason why it wasn't on the East Coast and in England and places, the butterfly bush will spread and become invasive. But you know, there's no doubt that butterflies love to have it as a nectar plant. So basically, I think it is, you know, I don't think it's a bad nectar plant. You know, they like it, but I think it's really important to plant more of the other kind of nectar plants, not because I know some people have more than one Buddleia. So
Yeah.
it's another controversy, you know, I mean, anything in that is managed will be okay.
Yeah, and Buddleia also takes more water than most of our natives, so you might want to consider that as well.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question from Jim. It says, we have a lot of Mataliha poppy at Spring Lake Village. Is that good for anything?
Yeah, it's a native nectar plant. I mean, it's you know, it is good for you know, it's nice to have. It's just nice to have a variety of things. But the Matilla poppy is a wonderful nectar plant.
Great. It gets big, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it all depends on where, you know, the space you have. And if you have space, and then, you know, you could even have, that would be a great place to have your speciosa, the native milkweed.
So back to speciosa, does native milkweed grow in heavy clay soil, and how much water does it need?
Well, it's interesting when you say, you remember native milkweed was here before we were. And so the native milkweed will grow, in heavy soil, in heavy clay. I expect it would. Most plants will, because clay soil is actually very nutritious. It's just very dense. And the interesting thing, there are people that I know have a lot of trouble trying to grow native milkweed from seed. Personally, I recommend getting starts, and quite a few nurseries will have native milkweed starts. And you know what? A lot of the garden clubs do that too, as well as the master gardeners. Will send you this, sell you the starts, because it's actually easier that way. So it will, all plants need water to start off with, native or non-native. And once it's established, obviously it won't need so much, but you need that same thing with, the penstemon, with the scabiosa, asters. They will grow in clay soil, but you can amend it and just water it. And once it's established, it will be beautiful and you'll be so glad you have it.
Okay. Any more questions?
Nancy, I answered a question, but I think it needs a little more from Suzanne on the cabbage.
Oh, the cabbage moth?
Yeah.
Don't talk to me about cabbage moths right now.
Somebody was asking, do you think the cabbage moth white butterfly, is it good or bad? And I linked the pest notes for those.
I think that's a good thing to do, because they are native, but this is exactly reason why you see so much of it, is because we plant the host plant for them. And, it's like in business, supply and demand. If you have a lot of the host plant, you're going to have a lot of the butterfly. And you'll see with the pest notes, and that's a great way to answer those kind of questions, is that integrated pest management, having the beneficial insects. But one of the important things, and on milkweed as well, by the way, is to monitor your plants. So as soon as you see the butterfly laying eggs or the little caterpillars, you use your little fingers to take them off. And by the way, it's the same thing with milkweed, and that has the little orange oleander aphids. Do check the plants to see if you see them. If you remove them very quickly, you'll be able to control an infestation. Because the oleander aphid this last year, I was ill and didn't go outside for a while. And I had one plant that was totally decimated with the orange aphids. And so the thing is, if you see them, you want to get rid of them. If you have a large infestation, you should cut it off and put it in the green bin, and your plant will be fine, because you've taken away the food source.
Okay, so I think with the cabbage moths, I know the kids love to see the cabbage moths, and they go, "Oh, it's a butterfly! It's a butterfly!" I've been picking those little green caterpillars off of my broccoli like almost daily lately.
Yeah.
And I just get rid of the caterpillars. I don't know that the cabbage moths add a whole lot to the environment.
Not really, but
So-
their food source is there.
Right.
It's all, as I say, it's supply and demand. If you have the food source, you will have the caterpillars.
Yeah.
And we have like a wildlife corridor for the cabbage white, because a lot of people will plant, the cabbages and broccolis and whatever.
Yeah, kale. Yeah, they love my kale. Yeah. So,
So
any
remember,
more questions?
but when you have your vegetables, don't forget to plant nectar plants in between these different fields. That's how they do organic farming, which brings in the beneficial insects who will also look after those little things, like praying mantis. I mean, they're a wonderful source of eating different caterpillars. I just don't want them on my beautiful caterpillar host plants. But
Yeah.
cabbage white, go for it.
I don't think that they're endangered in any stretch of the imagination.
No.
Okay, so one of the things Suzanne mentioned was in Pest Notes. You can connect to the Pest Notes through the University of California Integrated Pest Management Program has Pest Notes on basically anything, any disease, any bug, and anything that's bugging your plants. And you can connect to that off of our Master Gardener homepage. It's a wealth of information, both for garden pests and indoor pests as well. So, I guess if there are no further questions, then thank you so much, Suzanne, for your very beautiful and informative presentation. And we thank all of you for joining us and your patience with us as we're learning this webinar tool. And look for us at future Master Gardener events. We hope to see you in person before too much longer. And thanks again for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.